Welcome to teachmeall.com. In this video, we're going to show you how to change the front brake pads on this 2000 Toyota Sienna LE.
That's right. You need to keep a check on those brakes. Don't let any kind of problem go neglected. It costs you a lot more later if you do that.
And then we're going to go over the tools that we need to do this job properly.
Brake pads and new brake rotors, a jack, 2 jack stands, and 2 wheel chocks. Some brake fluid, some brake parts cleaner, some high temperature caliper grease, some anti-seize lubricant, and some thread lock. Some hose pinch pliers, a large C-clamp, a disc brake spreader, a flathead screwdriver, a 20mm socket and ratchet for the lug nuts, a 14mm socket and ratchet for the caliper guide pin bolts, a 17mm socket and ratchet for the caliper bracket bolts, an 18mm thin wrench. This is not a thin wrench here, but we'll show you one in a second. Here it is. A torque wrench, a bungee cord, a brake bleeder kit, some glasses, and some shop towels, a shop light, and a 5/16 box-end wrench for the bleeder screw. First, we set our emergency brake and put our wheel chocks behind both rear tires. Now we use a screwdriver to remove the hubcap. Be careful not to damage your hubcap. Then we're going to use our 20mm socket and ratchet to break loose the lug nuts by turning them a quarter to half a turn. We go to the other side, remove the hubcap here, and also loosen up the lug nuts. Then we're going to jack the vehicle up. And here we use this cross member in the center of the vehicle. Which is the vehicle off the ground. We put our jack stands under the frame here. Then we lower the vehicle onto the jack stands. And now we finish removing the lug nuts using our socket and ratchet. You've noticed we have a couple of broken wheel studs, and we'll replace those as we replace the pads. There's one right there. Then we slide the tires up under the vehicle for convenience and for safety. We do this for both sides. Then we're going to turn the wheels to the passenger side to get access to the caliper. Here's the bolt locations. The caliper guide pin bolts, top one and the bottom one. Caliper mounting bracket bolts, top and the bottom. Here's our bleeder screw with the dust cover on, and here it is with it off. Then we use our hose pinch pliers and clamp the brake line, so keep anything debris from going back up into the braking system as we compress the piston. Then we remove the dust cover, put our 5/16 wrench on, and put on our brake bleeder kit. Then we use our large C-clamp to compress the piston slightly to make it easier to remove the caliper from the brake pads. Then we open the bleeder screw. We're going to slightly compress the piston, and we tighten up the bleeder screw, remove the brake bleeder kit, remove our wrench, and reinstall our dust cover. Then we're going to remove the caliper guide pin bolts, put our 18mm thin wrench into position. We use our 14mm socket and ratchet to remove the caliper guide pin bolt. And move to the bottom. Break the bolt loose, then we remove it. With both bolts removed, we can remove our caliper, and we'll tie it up using our bungee cord. Then we're going to remove our brake pads, and we'll inspect them for any cracks. But since we're going to replace them anyway, we're just going to discard them. Then we're going to remove our caliper mounting bracket using our 17mm socket and ratchet. We'll start with the top, and then we're going to move the lower one. Both bolts removed, we'll remove our caliper mounting bracket. Then we can slide our rotor off. And here you can see that we replaced the 2 wheel studs that were broken. Then we slide a new rotor into place. And hold it in place using one of our lug nuts. Using our brake parts cleaner and a clean rag, we'll remove any oil or grease from the new brake rotors on the front side and the back. Then we're going to apply a little thread lock to the caliper mounting bracket bolts. Slide our caliper mounting bracket into place. Insert our bolts. Tighten them up with our 17mm socket and ratchet. And then we'll torque them to 79 foot-pounds unless otherwise specified. Now we're going to apply a little anti-seize lubricant to the slides where the pads go into the caliper mounting bracket. Always inspect your old hardware before installing your brake pads. Now we're going to remove our caliper guide pins. We'll wipe them off, and then we'll apply a little anti-seize lubricant to both caliper guide pins. We'll slide them back into the caliper mounting bracket. Make sure they pop into place with the dust cover. Make sure you remove any old grease off of the caliper guide pin. Apply your anti-seize lubricant. Push them back in and then pop it onto the dust boot. Then we're going to put our new pads into the caliper mounting bracket. We're going to smear a little high temperature caliper grease on the back of each pad. Now we're going to prepare to install our caliper. First we remove it from the bungee cord. Then we install one of the old brake pads, and then use our disc brake spreader to compress the piston. We remove the dust cover from the bleeder screw, install our wrench over the bleeder screw, and install our brake bleeder kit. Open up the bleeder screw and compress the piston by tightening our disc brake spreader. And always make sure you use an old brake pad to do this with, instead of pressing directly onto the piston. Once the piston's fully compressed, we'll remove our disc brake spreader, remove our old brake pad, tighten up our bleeder screw, remove our brake bleeder kit, remove our wrench, and reinstall the dust cover. Then we're going to slide our caliper into place over the new pads, line it up with the caliper guide pins, apply a little thread lock to the caliper guide pin bolts, insert the caliper guide pin bolts and tighten them up. We'll snug them down using our ratchet and our 18mm thin wrench, and then we're going to torque them to 25 foot-pounds. Do this for the top and the bottom. Then we're going to remove our hose pinch pliers and move to the other side. Then we're going to turn our wheels to the driver's side. Pinch the brake line with our hose pinch pliers. Remove our dust cover. Insert our wrench over the bleeder screw. Install our brake bleeder kit. Using our large C-clamp, we're going to slightly compress the piston. Open up the bleeder screw. Compress the piston with our C-clamp, just slightly. Then we're going to remove our C-clamp, tighten up our bleeder screw, remove our brake bleeder kit, remove our wrench, reinstall our dust cover. Then we're going to remove the caliper guide pin bolts using our 14mm socket and ratchet and our 18mm thin wrench. With the caliper guide pin bolts removed, we'll slide our caliper off and tie it up using our bungee cord. Then we're going to remove our old brake pads. And remove our caliper mounting bracket using our 17mm socket and ratchet. With both bolts removed, we can slide our caliper mounting bracket off. Then we can remove our old rotor, install our new rotor, hold it into place with a lug nut. And clean the new rotor with some brake parts cleaner and a clean rag. Do this on the front and the back side. Apply some thread lock to our caliper mounting bracket bolts. Position our caliper mounting bracket. Insert our bolts. We'll tighten them down. Then we'll torque them to 79 foot-pounds, unless otherwise specified. Then we're going to inspect our old brake hardware and apply a little anti-seize lubricant to the area where the pads slide in. Then we're going to remove our caliper guide pins, clean them off, and then we'll apply the anti-seize lubricant to both caliper guide pins and slide them back into place. Remember to wipe off the old grease. Then we're going to install our new brake pads into the caliper mounting bracket. We're going to apply some high temperature caliper grease to the back of both pads. Apply some thread lock to the caliper guide pin bolts. Then we'll get ready to install our caliper, remove it from the bungee cord. Use one of the old brake pads to push against a piston. Insert our disc brake spreader. Remove the dust cover from the bleeder screw. Install our 5/16 wrench. Install the brake bleeder kit. Open up the bleeder screw. And using our disc brake spreader, we'll compress the piston inside the caliper. Once the caliper is fully compressed, we'll remove our disc brake spreader, our old pad, tighten up the bleeder screw, remove the brake bleeder kit, remove our wrench, and reinstall the dust cover. Then we're going to slide our caliper into place. We're going to install our caliper guide pin bolts. Remember to thread lock these bolts. We'll tighten them up using our 14mm socket and ratchet and our 18mm thin wrench. Don't tighten these up much. We need to torque them to 25 foot-pounds unless otherwise specified. We need to remove our hose pinch pliers. We're getting ready to bleed the brakes. So we raise the hood and remove this cap where the brake fluid goes. Then we remove the cap off our master cylinder. Then we add .3 brake fluid until we get to the maximum fill line. We reinstall our cap on the master cylinder. And here's the max line. Then we're getting ready to bleed the brakes. We're going to move the wheels to the passenger side, remove our dust cover, install our 5/16 wrench, install our bleeder kit. Have your partner depress and hold down the brake pedal, open up the bleeder screw, and watch for air bubbles in the brake fluid coming through the bleeder kit. Now tighten up the bleeder screw, have your partner release the brake pedal, have them depress it again, open the bleeder screw and watch for bubbles in the brake fluid.